Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Here's where I want to start. I want to get a little more into this hurricane news and information, and, of course, the endless crimes that are taking place, including, I might add, the crime of censorship of individuals who have endless social media accounts. And yet the information that they're putting out there and the videos that they're producing and the stories that they're telling are causing their accounts to be nuked by the very people, again, who monitor these companies, run these companies, etc. Me personally, again, not a lawyer, but I think this fits under the Law of War Manual's reprisals. Again, these are domestic individuals who are willfully keeping people from engaging in their constitutional right to freedom of speech, even more specifically than the regular freedom of speech that we engage in on a regular basis. But it's far more specific in that it has to do with attempting to save people's lives. And again, the number of lives that are being lost as a result of being held up or information not getting out there has to be incalculable. It has to be endless. Again, the people working for these companies have to be arrested, certainly in the long term, but they have to be. Someone has to get to these companies within our military, the good part of our military, if that even exists these days, and then get to them and say, we know that you've broken the law, we know that you've censored people, we now are confiscating your company, we now own your company. What you once owned is not yours anymore, it is now ours, and then take them away. And then they go away someplace. Again, the amount of information that is being withheld from people regarding all of this is it's just immeasurable. So I'll start even here with this. If you jump on YouTube, you'll notice that there are many more videos and channels that are being created right now solely dedicated to the hurricane victims and everything that's been happening here. And as I've been over before, we know that this is geoengineering. That, again, should prove to people that this should fit under reprisals. We have ample evidence that this is the case. There are endless videos that prove that this is the case. There are endless videos that show weather modification planes owned by Lockheed Martin and the government. Of course, they're one and the same, but you get what I'm saying. They're flying directly into certainly Hurricane Helene, and then amping it up, and then changing its path and changing its direction. Hurricane Helene, as it turns out, was supposed to head toward Indiana and work its way up right through the Midwest. So, again, the path was clearly changed toward the Appalachian Mountains, and what's done is done. Again, with that said, I would encourage people to get on YouTube and bounce around and watch some of these on-the-ground footage channels that exist. Again, they're created by both people who live there and then individuals from out of town and out of state who are traveling to these areas and recording what's going on and, again, talking with the locals and finding out exactly what's happening. So, again, I would encourage people to do that. I've certainly gathered as many videos as I can. I put them in the war videos, so I would, again, encourage people to watch those too just to stay informed. But it's absolutely horrific. But again, at least more YouTube channels are being created, and I wouldn't doubt that some of them are even being taken down, which is beyond terrible. Again, it's an interesting dynamic, I think, when the American citizens have the ability, of course, to do their own research, create their own media content, and then put it out there for the American public and the world to see. And then the left-wing media, of course, the mainstream media, never even touches any of this. They don't touch it with a 10-foot pole. They aren't even there. I mean, local media is reporting on some of these stories and talking to some of these people just in that general area, but the national media is not covering this whatsoever. And if they do, they're probably supporting FEMA and they're supporting the other government agencies because, of course, they are the corrupt government as a media agency also. And they're all owned by generally the same kinds of people. You know, of course, for the illusion of there being a difference, when in fact there is not. But with all of that said, again, this right here should prove to people the level of crime that is being committed. I mean, I can't think of a bigger trap than this entire geoengineered weather storm that has occurred. And of course, you now have the other hurricane, the other one, that is now right outside of Florida and outside of the Tampa area, which actually started off of the coast of Mexico, very specifically inside of the Gulf of Mexico. Again, do hurricanes normally spawn there, or are they fertilized there through geoengineering and a number of other things? So again, it's about to cut Florida right in half. It's, I believe, at the very least, a Category 4. I think its name is Milton, if I'm not mistaken. This is set to hit Sunday night, if it hasn't already made landfall to some extent. Again, if storms can be amplified, we know for a fact that they can be purposefully decreased in size also. And they can. But as we all know, this has to do with corruption. This has to do with money. It has to do with spreading the whole climate change lie and filtering more money away from individuals and into the pockets of those corporations and the people who run them. So again, these people have to be rounded up, because what we're seeing now is we're actually seeing, for the first time in a very long time, Americans give a big middle finger to government and say, we don't want you around. You're not taking our land. We don't care about you. And if you get in our way, we're going to kill you. Me personally, I like this. I like this a lot. But let me continue here with just a couple of stories and a couple of posts. This was from Chris Martinson, PhD, at Chris Martinson on X. This is from a few days back, but he said the following. He said, this evening, from a Peak Prosperity member to me via private message at my site. They said the following, quote, I can't post this online because it's not quite public yet, but government officials had a town meeting with all of the residents of Chimney Rock, North Carolina, and basically told them that the town was being bulldozed. Bodies and all of the land was being seized by the federal government, and they would not be able to move back, and basically their homes, the ones that were once standing, were no longer theirs, and the federal government owned it all. I don't know what crazy play for land this is, but there was a lot of conspiracy about lithium mines, and let me just tell you, as someone who lives in Charlotte and has friends who live in the area of Western North Carolina, they are not being helped with this. Is actually being a stand-down operation by federal government. Then they responded and said, what the heck, that's quite disturbing. Is this first-hand, second-hand, or more distant info? They responded back to him and said, our friend owns an Airbnb in Chimney Rock. They had a town meeting yesterday, and someone from the federal government told them that all of the things in the town meeting, but doesn't want the information getting out. Also, they are not picking up the bodies. The stench of the bodies everywhere is insane, and for some reason the government doesn't want to go pick up the bodies. It says one pastor of a local church was going to order to door delivering water, and they changed their delivery requests to body bags because so many of the homes that they've gone to needed body bags. We're trying to keep the body count. They're not picking up the bodies. They don't want to identify the bodies, and they're just leaving them there to rot in the streets. They continued, and they responded back and said, I can't even, I'm stunned. This is beyond anything I could have imagined, even very recently. You always pick up and bury the dead. It's what humans do. They are violating every possible custom on purpose. Well, they're Jewish, so there's that. It goes on. It says, anyway, pick up, let me see here, blah, blah, blah. It says, thank you for keeping me informed. People need to know about this. Let me know when you'd be comfortable with me posting to the other forums in a anonymized fashion, of course. They responded back and said, you can post it. You can post it. The message is needed to get out. Something evil is going on in North Carolina mountains. I just didn't want to be identified. Just today, we filled up a trailer for a shelter in Hendersonville, North Carolina. It had no food for tons of moms and babies. All of the stores around are empty or locked. In Chandler, North Carolina, 2,000 people haven't eaten anything or drank in 6 days and just got an SOS message out for help. I'm trying to tag the Cajun Navy in Operation Airdrop, but people are dying by the minute. Multiple truckers have reported having tires slashed. Our friends in Chimney Rock said that they heard multiple stories of people being robbed at gunpoint. making supply runs. 2 people that drove down to Charlotte yesterday and today. One that we helped said bodies in trees, all over ditches, in major roads back. Something weird is going on here in North Carolina. They continued and finished up and said, someone with a large national megaphone needs to amplify how bad it is. People are now starting to die trapped. My town is Operation Airdrop. North Carolina Central Command. They need pilots with planes and now are asking just for trucks. People with big equipment are needed, but more than anything, the nation needs to put pressure on Washington to deploy the National Guard ASAP. The 82nd was begging to go since Saturday, but has been told to stand down. Every fucking Apache we have should be flying rescue missions. Please amplify the message. Unquote. Okay. I watched one of these other YouTube videos also, and it was a woman who was volunteering for rescue services. She lives in this small river town in North Carolina, and the river separates basically 2 counties. So again, on one side of this river, there's one county with homes all along the side of the river, and then same thing on the other side in the separate county. And of course, you can see straight across it, there's no obstruction. She said that before the hurricane got there, and of course, she openly stated that there's bodies up and down the river. You can smell them. They're of course buried, so it's very difficult to get to them. And she was even told by the National Guard they're just leaving them there, that they're not doing anything about them. She went on to say that the river again had never been above approximately 2 feet high. It's a 1 to 2 foot river is all. In fact, having been in Chimney Rock myself in those general areas, I can tell you that those rivers are gorgeous. They truly are. I mean, they flow crystal clear water by and large, of course, well before this hurricane, but it's crystal clear water. You can see straight to the bottom, and it's only, again, a couple of feet deep. Beautiful rocks at the bottom, the whole thing. It's absolutely, I mean, it's heavenly. But at the exact same time, she said, during this time, before the hurricane even landed, the river got over 9 feet high. And she said it's never been that way. She was also describing to this individual who was filming them that there are supposed to be river height sensors that exist in all of these towns, and that the state government of North Carolina is responsible. And then they tell the environmental group that, again, is a government-run group within North Carolina and probably every state, if I had to take a guess, that they're responsible for basically replacing these river sensors, these river height sensors. Well, their river height sensor had been broken for years. And this woman, again, in particular, she was openly discussing how she's contacted all of the appropriate officials to tell them multiple times a year that their river sensors are in fact broken and have been broken and are not being replaced. Now, I assume that those river sensors would be attached to some kind of a siren system, much like, again, a backup sump pump or something like that. The water level reaches so high, it hits a particular electric sensor, and then it trips a siren of some kind that's on a power pole or something. Maybe not even run by actual power. It's just, again, tripped through water hitting it. Either way, she said that none of these sensors have ever been replaced. She said worse yet, excuse me, was that when, again, before the hurricane hit and the river was up to 9 feet high, if not higher than that, she said they already started to lose power, and then they lost internet, and then they lost all cell phone service. It wasn't until after losing all of that that they apparently received a text, an emergency text message from the state government or the local government that said, you need to find your way to higher ground. But by that time, the homes had already been washed away. And she was already describing, again, these cinder block homes, and they're just being picked up by the water and then crashing into another house and so on and so on. And unfortunately, she was also describing one of her neighbors who lived right across the river, and she pointed right at the chimney. And there's a fireplace in a chimney, and that's the only thing that's left standing. Everything else is quite literally gone. And she goes, I don't know where she is. If she was in the house, I mean, she has to be dead because I don't know where else she could possibly be. But it didn't matter. I mean, the point is that they didn't receive any kind of a digital warning or a digital message until after the power was out, which means the message went to no one. So, again, more advocacy for less electronics, more advocacy for getting back to using our eyes and our brains as to what's actually going on and not relying on digital devices to get our work done and to get the job done and to have common sense. Again, what's the weatherman saying? Well, look in the sky, make preparations, get out of the way. If you see the water raising within the river, you might want to head to higher ground. What was sad was, and again, I'm not criticizing these people. It's more of me criticizing artificial intelligence and government, not them. Unfortunately, a lot of these people are remarkably elderly, and again, they're not fast, and they didn't have the ability to move quickly. But in that situation with her neighbor's house, where only the chimney and the fireplace were left, which was built of stone, and apparently very well built because that was the only thing that was left, at the back of that house is a giant hill. A giant wooded, tree-lined hill where you would think that, again, if someone wanted to escape and leave their home because they were watching the water rise, they would have just run up that hill because the water wasn't getting that high. And it certainly wasn't up the side of this hill. But either way, this is absolutely horrific. I think that goes without saying. It continues to prove that government wants us dead. It continues to prove that government agencies want us dead. This is all a depopulation agenda. It's right in line with all of it. If anybody out there strikes this up to, well, Sean, there's just natural disasters, and that's the way that it works. And not every natural disaster is a depopulation agenda. Again, to those individuals, I would say go to hell, number one. And number two, it's called evidence. And it's called clues. And if you're looking at the mainstream media for your answer, you're looking in the wrong place. Because if you're still paying attention to what's on the old TV, then you're paying attention to the enemy's messaging. This continues to be the problem. Again, there are endless citizen journalists out there, endless individuals that are piecing all of this together and moving this information around on social media, telling everybody what's really going on here. And at the forefront of all of this is not just government land grabs, not just corporation involvement. It's geoengineering and the weaponization of weather to destroy people's homes, kill individuals, take their land when all of it is said and done and the ash is all clear and the water levels decrease, and then government moves in and just takes it. There's also this, the $750 relief check, of course, is now being reported that in the fine print of this alleged $750 contract for people impacted, that if they don't pay it back because it's a loan, that if they don't pay it back in a year's time, then government seizes all of their property. Will just take their land, their home, and anything on it, and anything around it. Again, it seems like fraud. It seems like a deliberate scheme to steal from people. This seems premeditated. All of this. There's too many arrows pointing in that direction. Occam's razor would show us that this is, in fact, the case. The answer clearly lies in the explanation that requires the least amount of assumptions. We don't have to assume that these things are happening. They are, in fact, happening. There was also this. This was a post on Great Awakening. Again, this right here is right up my alley. It was titled, "The Spark for a Civil War is in North Carolina. This is just a theory, but based on the deep state's desperation, I could see them attempting this." It says, quote, edit, "I should have said revolutionary type of war because it would be people against the government agency." It said, quote, "There's a lot of fuck around and find out energy building in the comments and posts across social media regarding the spirit of the survivors on Helene. It makes me proud to be an American. We are resilient when push comes to shove. And, knowing how the cabal works and masterfully uses various energies to its advantage, there could quickly evolve a situation akin to some sort of civil war, revolutionary war, that is much more revolutionary than civil," they said. For example, what if FEMA and lackey law enforcement, which, by the way, I hope most are good but some are not, happens to poke a bear too much, perhaps on purpose, and shots are fired? What if someone is killed by the government in that manner? Perhaps then the people might decide that it is open season, guerrilla style. Next thing you know, you have shootouts. National Guard called in, itchy patriots driving hundreds of miles to get in on the action, etc. That conflict could mushroom all over the country. I really hope that does not happen, they said. We need a leader who can create calm, but we are a long way from having him in office and able to play a role in North Carolina. Perhaps there is a way for Trump to play a stronger, save-the-day role. It could be as simple as organizing efforts. I don't know, spitballing here. Bottom line is that a conflagration is very possible, unquote. Again, you heard me mention this in previous episodes. I'm shocked this hasn't happened already. With all of the individuals, again, who have attempted to keep people out and keep people from helping, this is exactly what something like this would lead to. You would have to have Americans, again, attempting to help other Americans, and then, of course, only having government stand in the way, thereby causing government by themselves, both individually as an individual person, and then, of course, the organization that they are with, openly engage and allow for the murder of other Americans. What Americans are going to stand by and let that happen? Again, I've seen other videos and individuals and posts rather on social media and individuals saying that there are certain sheriffs who have openly said that if FEMA or the National Guard or whomever gets in the way of other citizens who are not affiliated with government from helping other citizens, that those sheriffs will arrest those government officials. That's a good move. I hope that that's true, and that needs to be something that does happen. But again, if things pop off and people need to take things into their own hands here, well, then that's exactly what has to happen. Again, it's your land, it's your property, and it's your neighbors, and it's your people. And government is the enemy here, and the people standing by and allowing, again, government to do this to people, this is the problem. Here's another issue too, and again, I've seen a lot of posts about this also, and it's a bit disappointing. I'm shocked that people are just, again, writing checks and throwing money to these organizations. Not just FEMA, but even local churches. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't eat and drink money. And if churches and local areas and local churches get said money, what are they going to spend it on? There's nothing around to buy. The stores are looted. They're empty. There's nothing there. So again, sending money to these local churches in these particular areas or even neighboring areas when there's nothing around to even buy. What makes you think that church is actually going to spend that money appropriately? Let alone get actual supplies to people when you also have, of course, government getting in the way. I'm shocked that even today people trust the church. It blows me away. I don't get it. This is the same church that told you to wear a mask. This is the same church that shut down because of a COVID lie. This is the same church that got its congregations jabbed. And now all of a sudden what? You're supposed to just throw checks at them and throw money at them like they're going to actually do the right thing with any of that money when in fact they can't because there's no supplies in the general area? I mean, my God. People just aren't learning. They're not learning here. Church and government are the same. And they're not the same in the sense that they are for God and for the people. It's quite the opposite. It was the warning that Thomas Jefferson openly stated, that if you have government ruling over the church, then you won't be able to tell the difference between the two. But you should never take God out of government, because if you do, government will rule the church. And then that will be the end of that. Well, government already does rule the church. Look at the last 4 years. Go back to 2020 and 2021. The proof is right there. So again, I hear of people say things like Samaritan's Purse. Again, I don't trust Samaritan's Purse. Not in the slightest. I'm not a Franklin Graham fan. I'm just not. I wasn't a fan of his dad either. I've heard too many things and read too many things about his dad. He was a Freemason of the highest order. The Masons funded his first church. They owned him 100%. plenty of evidence out there indicating that Billy Graham was a child rapist and a child trafficker and 1,000 other things. I'm sorry. True or not, I tend to believe it, but at the exact same time, I don't trust Samaritan's Purse. Not any further than I can throw them. Again, I think that it's a giant money laundering operation. So I understand that people are like, oh, I trust Samaritan's Purse and they do good work and blah, blah, blah. Again, you can do 5 good things and 100 bad things. It doesn't make you good. You can show people that you're doing 10 good things and do 1,000 bad things. It doesn't mean that you're good. It just means that you're fooling the individuals at face value as to what you're capable of. You just show them what you actually do at face value, so to speak, but behind the scenes, you're doing far worse. Again, I don't trust any of these organizations whatsoever. There's also this aspect too, and it has to do with voting, and of course the election. If you wanted the military, or good guys in so-called military, to delay the election, this would be another reason to do so. You have endless displaced people in numerous states, which are all red states, by the way, and are all red states that were going to tip even more red than they did in 2020. Donald Trump won Georgia. He won North Carolina, he won Florida, he won Virginia. This is difficult for people to comprehend, but that happened. Even though, again, some people believed that Georgia was for Joe Biden and whatever, and Virginia was the exact same. Not true. Again, these are the impacted areas. So with all of these displaced voters, where are they actually going to vote now? They used to vote down the street or down the river. Well, there's no voting anymore then. And voting is already taking place in many states. Early voting is already happening. Again, the number of votes that are not going to be counted in these very specific states is going to be alarming. Because again, voter fraud is already taking place. They're already printing up endless ballots. They're already moving these ballots, of course, to endless states to be fraudulently filled in by God knows who. So again, Occam's razor. Just look at it at face value. There's your answer. This is what's happening. This is where all roads are pointing to. Now, before I move on to just a few education stories and then a couple of jab-related stories, I want to make mention of this. If you're curious and you want to download this PDF, on my website under the Government Documents tab, at the end of that list, I believe it's number 39, is the Law of War Manual. You're welcome to download it. Again, when you click on it, it'll take you to a website, and then if you hover your mouse over the lower half, of course, or wherever you need to hover the mouse, you can download the PDF. Again, it's over 1,000 pages long, well over 1,000 pages long. And in the upper right-hand corner, when you open up the document on your desktop or wherever you download this, in the search box, when you're searching for keywords within the actual document, if you type in reprisals, you will see all of the different pages that reference reprisals. I believe reprisals, if I'm not mistaken, the definition of it and the explanation of it starts on page 1127 or 1128, somewhere around there. Either way, it's subsection 18.18. And again, you'll see the definition, you'll see all the explanations like what I read in Friday's episode, and a number of other things. Again, I just feel like this is something that has to happen. We have to have a halt in our government right now. There has to be a complete stop to everything. There have to be people who are rounded up. This cannot be some slow walk or some, don't worry, we're going to fix this over time kind of thing. There has to be an event that takes place here where everybody is in place and bad people are rounded up. Again, with every passing day, this becomes more and more necessary, I think. And that's my opinion, that's my 2 cents, but I'm tired of hearing all of these stories coming out of, again, North Carolina and Virginia and East Tennessee and Georgia and other places where, again, This Hurricane Katrina 2.0 government mentality, government takeover continues to be sort of the norm and the explanation, even at the exact same time, while government and the media certainly isn't really even discussing any of this. They're not even bringing it up. They're not even on the ground. I mean, I don't see Fox News there on the ground. I don't see CNN on the ground in any of these places. That means those news organizations need to be rounded up. Because by not talking about this, they're costing people their lives. This is a very real thing. This is not going away. There are more hurricanes right around the corner. And again, to bring it full circle, the geoengineering is at the forefront of all of this. That also means that the pilots flying the planes that are doing the geoengineering need to be caught and hung by the neck until dead. The same thing is true with the people who lead Lockheed Martin and the people who make these planes for these particular reasons. This is a reason to get rid of Lockheed Martin and everybody who works within. If this doesn't happen, ladies and gentlemen, we as citizens are all ripe for the picking, but there has to be a revolution in this country, and it has to be more than just an information revolution. There has to be something else that happens here. Because they're already weaponizing their own tools against us to kill us. This is already happening. This has been happening for a very long time. But it's becoming more and more painfully obvious, you would think, to these individuals. But I understand, unfortunately, that there are endless individuals who can't possibly believe that their government would want them dead. That their government would poison them. That their government would, again, poison their breakfast cereal. Or if they can get their hands around that, oh my God, my Fruit Loops are poisoned, that seems terrible. Why would they do that? That they wouldn't think, wait a minute, there's no way that that's the only thing that they're poisoning. That's not the only thing that they're amplifying in order to make people sick, dead, displaced, homeless, what have you. That there have to be other things, technologies, weather events, the combination of two, etc., etc. Again, it's just becoming more painfully obvious, and it just blows me away that there are still people not waking up to this fact. Now, let me do this real quick. Before I move into education stuff here, I want to read through my sample ballot for Election Day. I will be voting early, of course, and voting often. Just kidding. But either way, I will be voting early, and I wanted to read through my sample ballot here for Butler County, Ohio, because it's astounding. And the amount of tax levies that are on this ballot are absolutely astounding. And what they are for is equally as astounding. So first of all, in case you were curious, there are other people running for president outside of Donald Trump and Harris. Let's see here. There is Richard Duncan for president and Mitchell Preston Bupp for vice president. In case you were unaware, there's also a Chase Oliver and a Mike Matt. M-A-T-T, under the Libertarian presidential ticket, apparently. There's a Peter Sonsky and a Lauren Onak also running for president. And wouldn't you know it, Jill Stein is running for president as well, along with apparently a vice president, Anita Rios. So good luck to those individuals, I guess. Anyway, moving on down to the bottom here, there are a number of issues that are on the ballot. 3, if I'm not mistaken, or perhaps just more here. But anyway, most of them have to do with taxation and tax levies. But this first one, issue 1 in Ohio, says the following. To create an appointed redistricting commission, it says, not elected by or subject to removal by the voters of the state. So it's a proposed constitutional amendment, again, to redistrict in an attempt, as we all know. I'm not going to read the entire explanation because it is massive with at least 10 bullet points. But anytime you hear of redistricting, this is a left-wing gimmick in order to, again, redraw the lines as far as a map is concerned and redraw the lines as far as influence is concerned and voting and you name it. And it's always done by the communist left in order to, again, attempt to take a state that's traditionally red and turn it blue. The simple fact that this is even on the ballot should show people this is communism. Never been an issue in the past. Things like this have been discussed in the state of Ohio, certainly within the last 6+ years, but now it's officially on the ballot, and I can't imagine anybody actually voting for this. Again, at face value, redistricting means we want to take it from being a red state to a blue state by redrawing the lines on the map as to where people can vote and where they're supposed to vote and where they live and the whole thing. It's beyond ridiculous. So, yeah, I'm a hard no on issue 1. Then there's this one, issue 2, and this is in the city where I live. City of Oxford, proposed tax levy, an additional proposed tax levy. It says the following, quote, an additional tax for the benefit of the city of Oxford for the purpose of providing and maintaining fire apparatus and appliances, buildings and sites, therefore, or permanent, part-time, or volunteer firefighting, emergency medical service, administrative, or communications personnel to operate the same, including the payment of any employer contributions required for such personnel under Section 145.48 or 742.34 of the Revised Code, for the purchase or ambulance equipment, for the provision of ambulance, paramedic, or other emergency medical services operated by a fire department, or the payment of other related costs that the county auditor estimates will collect $1.285 million annually at a rate not exceeding 2.6 mils for each $1 of taxable value, which amounts to $91 for each $100,000 of the county auditor's appraised value for a period of 10 years, commencing in 2024, first due in calendar year of 2025. So first of all, that's also I'm a hard against all tax levies. With that said, this particular tax levy, as I'm told, also has to do with providing these services to the local university, because Miami University, even though they are on Butler County property, it would almost be an admission that they don't own it, that potentially China owns it, because again, why is it that the university can't buy their own ambulances? Why is it that they can't provide their own EMS services or fire truck or what have you? So again, the city is putting this up for everybody in the city, not the university, just the people who live in the city limits to pay higher taxes on their property so that the university can get more EMS services. My next question, of course, is beyond, of course, the fact that all of that's completely outrageous and completely unnecessary. Why is it that you need more EMS services? What'd you all do over the last 4 years? What'd you put in your bodies that's causing endless people to die and get sick in order to use these EMS services on such a constant basis? What's that one thing you all have in common? Now they want to tax us. Now they want to tax every property owner to pay for, again, both the university and the city's need for more EMS services. I'm sorry. You brought this on yourself. You were the ones that advocated for everybody to take those shots that don't work to prevent anything, because it's a biological weapon. And now you're reaping what you sow. So no, again, I'm against this tax levy. You've heard me say it on this show before, in particular around election time. If a person votes to increase their taxes, they should be institutionalized. It's that simple. They should have their head examined. Are you feeling okay? Not to mention they're being taxed for services that they typically don't use, that no one uses. But of course, this is the do-gooder mentality of left-wing communist government. They would say something like, well, it's for the greater good, Sean. And you should vote for it because other people use it. And so it's beneficial to them. Just because you don't use it doesn't mean you shouldn't vote for it. Go to hell. If I'm not using it, I'm not going to vote for it. Not to mention, I don't care what's on the other end of that tax levy. It says tax, which means I'm not voting for it. So there goes that. There's also this. Issue 10, proposed tax levy, a renewal for Lane Public Library. All the Lane Public Libraries in the area, they want more money too. Absolutely not. For what? To maintain your grift and your gay book depository? I don't think so. It says a renewal of the tax for the benefit of the Lane Public Library District counties of Butler and Preble for the purpose of current expenses that the county auditor estimates will collect $2.634 million annually at a rate not exceeding 0.75 mil for each $1 of taxable value, which amounts to $15 for each $100,000 of the county auditor's appraised value for a continuing period of time. That's interesting. They don't even say for how long. Just a continuing period of time, commencing in 2025, first due in the calendar year of 2026. No. That's a hard no. And of course, to round things out, the County of Butler County, Ohio, Issue 12, proposed tax levy. An additional tax for the benefit of Butler County for the purpose of the operations of community mental health service providers and community addiction services providers and the acquisition, construction, renovation, financing, maintenance, and operation of mental health facilities and alcohol and drug addiction facilities by the Butler County Mental Health and Addiction Recovery Services Board that the county auditor estimates will collect $6.612 million annually at a rate not exceeding $0.5 million for each $1 of taxable value, which amounts to $18 for each $100,000 of county auditor's appraised value for a period of 5 years, commencing in 2025, first due in calendar year 2026. No. Absolutely not. I'm not paying for your recovery services. I'm not voting for drug addicts to continue to have the ability to be drug addicts. This money will go to more needle exchange bullshit. It will go to, again, more tents to be built for these do-gooders to hand out flyers and then give them free needles and naloxone in a can to inject themselves with and then, bounce around town higher than a hippie on a helicopter to then only go back to these tents and do it all over again. Or not even do it in a tent, but just, again, do it in some kind of one of their, mental health addiction recovery buildings. Absolutely not. These grifting organizations deserve no money whatsoever. Think of the addicted, Sean. Think of them. Help them out. Go to hell. Go to hell. I'm not voting for any of this. Like I said, anybody who votes to tax themselves needs to be institutionalized. You need to check yourself. See if you're all right. Look in the mirror. Are you feeling okay? Honest to God, these people will vote themselves quite literally, a leftist, just a dumbass leftist will vote themselves straight into poverty more than they already are. They'll even do the math. They'll sit down and do the math and go, okay, well, that means that it's this much money per year and this amount of money I'm going to be taxed and, well, we can afford that and these people need that money, so I'm going to vote yes. I can think of a million other ways to spend that money and to save that money, which is exactly what people should be doing, I think. You should tally up the amount of money that you would be spending on property taxes with all of these levies and then save it and then vote no on all these tax levies. Honest to God. They would vote themselves right out of existence. If there was an issue on the ballot in any state and these left-wing communist do-gooders had the ability to vote themselves right out of existence, they'd do it. Well, it's for the greater good. And, we don't need this many people around and it would be a strain on the services, so I'd better vote to, eliminate myself or a couple of my family members. That's basically what you're doing when you vote for taxes, to increase your own taxes. I mean, buy a bullet and rent a gun. Shoot yourself in the foot. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. Now let me change subjects here to education and just add a little levity to all of this nonsense. This is rather funny, and again, it's the education system in a nutshell. You have to love this. Cicely sent this my way from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm going to give you the long and the short of it here. Basically, in an elementary school, there's a black guy who broke into this elementary school in the middle of the night. God knows how he got in, but he got in. He found his way into the elementary school, walking around, doing whatever. Of course, he's probably high on drugs or looking for drugs or whatever. He finds his way into one of the elementary school classrooms. Someone, of course, reports that there's been a break-in. Police show up. They start looking around. They can't find him. And then they start smelling. And they start sniffing around. And sure enough, they smell something that doesn't smell very good. And they hone in on a particular classroom. They draw their guns, and they find this guy, and he's in a closet, and he's covered in his own shit. Now, of course, they detained him and arrested him and what have you, but can you imagine now going back into that very classroom where there was a dude just hanging out in your closet, just soiling himself on a constant basis throughout the course of the evening? Don't mind the smell, kids. Let's get back to our math lesson. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. There was also this, more proof again that the American public school system just doesn't learn. This is from last week. It was titled, Virginia Teacher Fired for Misgendering Trans Student Wins $575,000 payout from school board. Virginia School Board has agreed to pay $575,000 settlement to a former high school teacher who was terminated for refusing to use a transgender student's preferred pronouns. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to become a little wealthy and get a little bit of money, just be a school teacher that doesn't play the pronoun game. Let them discipline you, let them even fire you for not using pronouns, and then sue them into the ground. And you'll win every single time. Because every American school that continues to do this to their employees is going to get sued and will lose every single time. It's a certainty. It's like back in the old days when you were in the arcade and you would play skee ball. And you're always trying to throw your ball into that 100 point or that whichever the highest amount was. I think it was 100. The 100 point circles that were in the top right-hand corners of the skee ball chute behind the net there. Only this time, with this particular social issue, which of course is complete pretend, every single chute in the skee ball, behind the skee ball net, at the end of the skee ball trail, every single one of those holes is a $100 value. So it doesn't matter how fast or slow you roll the ball, you're going to get 100 points every single time. This particular issue is proving to be an absolute cash cow. Again, if I was a school administrator, I would look at all my school employees and say, do not use pronouns. You will get sued. We will get sued, and we will lose. We aren't disciplining anybody for not using pronouns. That's not going to happen. Because you don't want to be out $500,000, the district doesn't want to be out $500,000, their insurance company doesn't want to pay $500,000, and we don't need to cause this trouble. But again, the school system in America always makes work for themselves. And in this case, by making work, they make trouble. Because they don't know how to not make trouble. They're slaves. They're socially engineered to make trouble. Mask wearing, social distancing, contact tracing, jab taking. You can pick a subject. Doesn't matter. Presidential elections. Local elections. Hell, we're in the local election season right now. American schools and local organizations within towns and cities flood these schools, in particular high schools, but also middle schools as well, and even elementary schools, with election messaging. Who people should vote for. What social issues are on the ballot that you should care about, even for little children who can't even vote. and even for high school students who by and large aren't old enough to vote. The social engineering is endless, and it never stops. I continue to be shocked that people continue to send their children to these environments. Case in point, this next story. Jesse James sent this my way. This is from Dave Bondi, at Dave Bondi TV on X. This has to do with the Houghton Lake, Michigan School District changing its Title IX what have yous, its Title IX rules, and basically abiding by Joe Biden's interpretation of Title IX. But don't worry, there's parents fighting back, and all these parents are fighting back against these Title IX changes, and we don't want trannies playing in sports, and we don't want trannies using whatever bathrooms they want, and don't worry, because we have a parents group and we're fighting back. The only parents group that needs to exist regarding American public schools is a parents group that filters parents away from the public school system permanently. That's it. If you have a parents group that's working together to maintain the government brainwashing system, and you think you're doing a good thing by going against the occasional government issue that gets brought up, I'm telling you, you're wasting your time. And you're wasting your energy. Again, this is completely unnecessary. Walk away, bankrupt the entire system, and it all falls down. And like I've said in the past, they'll come door to door and they'll beg. They'll physically beg to have people come back. And you give them a middle finger and you say, no, never again. And then the state gets involved. And then they clean house because they say your entire school board's lost their minds. Your superintendent no one trusts. God knows what's happening with the money, so your treasurer is gone. And that's how you get rid of everybody. I've been over this a million times. But what drives me crazy is these mom groups, quote unquote, get together. And they organize, and we're going to fight back, and we're going to go to the school board meetings, and we're going to yell, and we're going to scream, and we're going to change things. You're not changing shit. You're just wasting your time. You're spinning your wheels. Parent your own children. Teach your own children. Let them teach themselves. With the right structure in a healthy environment that doesn't have to deal with the trannies and all of the government manipulation. It's absolutely nuts. In fact, let me play you a little bit of this so you can just get a slight taste as to, again, the unnecessary fight here. If government is telling you that they want to manipulate you and they want to create a problem, why do you keep going to government? I can't figure it out. I can't figure out why these people are locked into changing something that they can't possibly change. And then, of course, if they did change something for the positive, what makes them think that they're not going to have to change something again in the future and pick up the fight again? Bankrupt these places. Anyway, let me just play about 2 minutes of this. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Lot going on in Michigan. There's a lot going on when it comes to the schools and so forth. In Title IX, this is it seems confusing, but Sabrina, I found you because you are up in northern Michigan. Is it Houghton Lake?
Yes.
So explain what's going on. Take it like from the very beginning. And there's changes to Title IX, and explain even what that is. I mean, because there's so much confusion about all of this.
There is, because at face value, it just looks like there's an update to the Title IX policies. But what's in those Title IX policies, the new revisions that were enacted by the Biden-Harris administration, is basically gender identity. The Board of Education has now updated the definition of sex to now include gender identity. So that means, for example, a biological boy can identify as a girl and use their restroom and locker rooms, and vice versa. But it's also more than that. There's parental rights that are being taken away in these revisions where, like, for example, if my child went to any school official and said they wanted to transition to a different gender, that school is not legally mandated to tell me now, and in fact would have to support that child during the transition.
And I think you've sent it to me. Is that actually in writing?
I don't know the specific terminology on it, but it states in the policies that they do not legally have to let the parents know when their child is struggling with like gender roles, gender dysphoria,
So
I don't certain terminology on it.
yeah, but that is in writing.
Yeah.
You said. And is that in writing with the federal Title IX, or is that at the local level? How's that work?
Federal.
Okay.
A federal law that affects all the federally funded schools.
Okay, so the school district, they meet, they talk about it, and then they voted to do what?
To adopt this new policy. So anything that the school wants to implement, they have to vote on.
Yeah. So they didn't make their own policy. Did they just take these Title IX changes and say, did they say, okay, this is it, we're doing it?
Well, I mean, it was a little more heated than that. At the board meeting, there was one board member specifically, her name is Jennifer Oster, who tried to say, let's implement our own policy, because it's a big ask that you're asking of the community to say that we're going to pass the new Title IX revision policy of 2264, but not follow it. He wanted us just to basically take his word that he's going to not implement this, but we needed to vote it for the funding anyway. And we had a board member saying that we should just enact our own policy and follow it, because right now it's held up in the Supreme Court and we're protected by an injunction. But he didn't listen.
Okay, I'm reaching out to the schools as well. It was covered, you said, by a TV station up there.
Yep.
And this is an issue that school districts are dealing with across the state. But this is what TV 9 and 10, and their headline is Houghton Lake Superintendent shuts down rumors of co-ed bathrooms, other changes. So you probably saw this story. What's your take on this?
I felt like, it wasn't really an investigation. It was basically saying 9 and 10 said, yep, new revisions to Title IX, went and talked to the superintendent. He said, yep, but we're not promoting co-ed. That's not, it's a play on wording here. We're not talking about co-ed. We're talking about biological boys being able to identify as the opposite sex, and the reverse being true for girls identifying as boys.
Again, this is not complicated. This is the easiest solution in the history of the world. You also, by the way, have endless college sports-related teams now, both large and small, openly choosing to not participate against other teams who have a tranny on them. It's that simple. They're forfeiting the game. They're saying, yeah, we're not playing. We'll take the loss. We don't care. We forfeit. This, of course, is a very good thing. But parents need to forfeit their children from government because government hates you. Take the tranny agenda very quickly to its logical conclusion. If they want trannies to use any bathroom they want, if they want to use, or teach rather, which is of course part of the long-term plan, teach all of the gender reaffirming nonsense to children and to minors to further confuse them within these environments. And then of course have medical intervention, which they already have within a lot of these environments, where counselors will meet with these kids and then help these kids convince themselves that they are in fact a sex that they are not, to only then give them resources to where they can go and cut their own balls off or whatever else that it is that they want them to do to themselves and mutilate themselves. When all of that takes place, what's the end goal ultimately? I wrote a Substack about it. The ultimate end goal of all of this is drug addiction, sexual abuse, suicide, and murder. That's it. That means that Title IX, the way that it's been written by government, implemented within American schools, is of course specifically now designed for genital mutilation, drug addiction, sexual abuse, suicide, and murder. So the school environment becomes an advocate for genital mutilation, drug addiction, sexual abuse, suicide, and murder. And you're sending your children there. Why? Again, you give government an inch, they'll take a mile. They're not finished. The bathroom thing is just the first step, and that's been going on for over 10 years now. Not telling your parents that you're confused about your gender. You'd only be confused if you're learning to be confused in a confusing environment. They're being taught the confusion. They're not born with this confusion. Well, I was born and I've always felt when I was a young tyke that I was a woman. Yes, I sound like a man, but deep down, I'm really a lady. I'm a 1950s well-dressed lady. No, you're a fella. You're a guy. It's that simple. And if you're a girl, you're a girl. You're not a man. Mr. Rogers said so after all, and he's not wrong. Again, this is not confusing. What a waste of effort, and what a waste of time and energy. Pull your children out, bankrupt the system. Send them the message that they don't think you'll ever send them, and then you win and they lose. It's the only way that you win and they lose. There was also this one, shifting subjects slightly, but this was out of the Chicago Tribune, and this was titled, "Entire Chicago Board of Education to Resign as Mayor Johnson Continues Push to Oust School CEO." Allow me to read a little of this here. It says, all members of Mayor Brandon Johnson's school board plan to resign the latest turmoil gripping his administration as it struggles for control of the Chicago public school system, led by embattled CEO Pedro Martinez. Chicago Board of Education President, no way I get that name, not white. My God. Jianan Shi, no chance. Along with members Elizabeth Todd Berland and other people, I'm not even going to say all their names, don't care, informed the mayor's office of their resignations. The mayor's office announced in a Friday statement, the extraordinary shakeup clears the mayor to reappoint the entire school board. In a statement, the mayor's office said, quote, Mayor Brandon Johnson and members of the Chicago Board of Education are enacting a transition plan which includes all current members transitioning from service on the board later this month, with the shift to a hybrid elected and appointed board forthcoming. Current board members and Mayor Johnson understand that laying a strong foundation for the shift is necessary to serve the best interests of the students and the families in Chicago public schools. Well, let's face it, no interests have ever been served in the Chicago public school system, have they? Again, it's an oxymoron. But if you thought that this was about money, you would be correct. I'm not going to read the entire article here, it's rather lengthy, but it does say this. It says, the first-term mayor ran on a platform of transforming public education and seemed well-equipped to deliver his agenda given the familiarity with the system and ability to learn on close advisors with CPS expertise. But he has instead found himself presiding over an increasingly uncertain situation surrounding the nation's fourth largest school district. It says part of Johnson's opposition to Martinez stemmed from the CEO's refusal to take out a $300 million high-interest loan, as well as assume a $175 million pension payment for non-teacher CPS employees. The school board sided with Martinez on those matters in July when voting on CPS's $9.9 million budget, one that will surely need to be amended to account for the next CTU contract. If the negotiations are striking, so too is the mayor's maneuvering that led to this moment. Never in modern history has Chicago seen a CPS chief pushed out while union contract negotiations are ongoing. It goes on here, it says, critics have said that Johnson and the CTU are attempting to consolidate power rather than allow checks and balances during a time of fiscal assurity. It says, but supporters of Johnson argue Martinez has to go because he has proven ineffective at lobbying Springfield for more cash and does not want to see the bold educational investments that Johnson campaigned on. You're all dirty. That's all. That's how I'll summarize that. You're all dirty. You're all just trying to steal from everybody. Nothing's ever improved in Chicago public schools. You graduate kids who can't read. Hell, half your staff probably can't read either. Let's cut to the chase. So yeah, it's just money laundering. With of course the help of the actual school system itself, the bureaucrats who work within, and the unions. They got to get a taste too. Can't leave them out. Okay, jab-related stuff. There was this one from the eddupreereport.com. It was titled, Pharmaceutical Industry Shaken by $33 Million Kickback Scheme, 2 Guilty Pleas in New Jersey Pharmacy Fraud. It says the financial toll of their scheme is staggering, about $33 million in reimbursements. There's that number again, 33. Claimed for compounded medications alone, with more than $5.8 million from TRICARE. This is from back on October 2nd. It said, in a recent development that rocked the pharmaceutical industry, 2 men have pleaded guilty to their involvement in a sophisticated kickback scheme centered around a New Jersey pharmacy. The operation, which swindled millions from health insurers through fraudulent compounded medication prescriptions, was masterminded by Jeffrey Andrews, 73 years old, and Adam Brocious, 59 years old, among others. Operating out of Main Avenue Pharmacy in Clifton, New Jersey, the group exploited high reimbursement compound medications such as scar creams and migraine treatments. From 2014 to 2016, they orchestrated a lucrative strategy that identified and pushed these expensive drugs onto the market. As CFO and later president of the Main Avenue, respectively, Andrews and Brocious were pivotal in coordinating this elaborate fraud. Their methods were straightforward yet deceptive. It says by creating prescription pads for these high-cost compounds and distributing them to a network of marketers nationwide, they ensured a steady flow of prescriptions. These marketers then collaborated with telemedicine companies and doctors willing to prescribe these medications for kickbacks. Once the prescription was filled and reimbursed by insurance programs, including Medicare and TRICARE, Main Avenue Pharmacy paid out significant sums to those who had helped generate these prescriptions. It says the financial toll of their schemes is staggering, about $33 million, and blah, blah, blah. Brocious faces up to 10 years in prison for conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud and another 5 years for violating the anti-kickback statute. Andrews also faces up to 5 years for his role in the scheme. Both could be hit with fines reaching $250,000 or double the gross gain or loss from their offenses, whichever amount is higher. It says sentencing on the horizon with Brocious' date set for February 20th of 2025, while Andrews will learn of his fate 2 days earlier on February 18th. Meanwhile, charges are still pending against another alleged co-conspirator, Chad Bean, from Philadelphia, his innocence maintained until proven otherwise. FBI, Health Services, blah, 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 Department of Defense, they were all aware. Well, whatever. They're all guilty. They're all guilty too. 3-letter government agencies, are you kidding me? The COVID fraud, for God's sakes. I mean, we're talking about prescription creams for these two guys. What about the entire COVID fraud? You'd have to take down everybody. You'd have to take down every pharmacy because you sold them a lie that they believed. Again, can you convict someone who doesn't know that the thing that they're delivering to people is killing them? I'm not sure. Is pleading ignorance an actual defense? It might be. But man alive. We're talking, I mean, this is funny because this is about, tens of millions of dollars regarding prescription creams for people. We're well aware of the COVID kickbacks that doctors got. We're well aware of the jab pushing that they receive on a year in and year out basis regarding flu shots and everything else, along with, of course, these major companies like Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, you name it. Kroger's. You walk into any of these stores and they ring it out over their PA systems. Don't forget to get your COVID shot and your flu shot at the exact same time. They're killing people. Again, this is way beyond some cream for some sore on your body. We're talking about an active biological weapon. This seems like small potatoes to me, compared to an active biological weapon that apparently most sheriffs in the United States still aren't doing anything about. Which leads me to this in conclusion, Zero Hedge. Shock study finds 6-fold increased death rate in COVID-vaxxed kids. Intrepid journalist Alex Berenson recently dissected a much undiscussed study from last June that ostensibly points to higher asthma rates developed in vaxxed versus unvaxxed children post-injection as the takeaway, until one, as he did, digs deeper into the data for much bigger and damning conclusion. It says, quote, 2 cohorts of children aged 5 to 18 who underwent SARS-CoV-2 testing were analyzed, unvaxxed children, with and without COVID-19 infection. Well, there is no COVID infection. There's just a fraudulent test that tells people you're sick when you're not, or that you have something that you don't actually have. And vaccinated children, it says, with and without infection. Propensity score matching was used to mitigate selection bias, and hazard ratio and 95% CI were calculated to assess the risk of new onset asthma. Our study found a significantly higher incidence of new onset asthma in COVID-19 infected children compared to uninfected children regardless of vaccination status. In cohort 1, 4.7% of COVID-19 infected children without vaccination developed new onset asthma versus 2% of the non-COVID-19 counterpart within a year. It says for cohort 2, COVID-19 infected children with vaccination showed a 8.3% incidence of new onset asthma, higher than the 3.1 in those not infected. Subgroup analysis further identified higher risks in males, children aged 5 to 12 years old, and Black or African American children. Sensitivity analysis confirmed the reliability of these findings. It says the study highlights a strong link between COVID-19 infection and an increased risk of new onset asthma in children, which is even more marked in those vaccinated, unquote. Let me take this a step further. Again, no offense to Alex Berenson and Zero Hedge for basically licking his boots. There is no COVID. This is simply a side effect of 5G towers, probably poisonous foods, and being shed on by the injected, along with, of course, any child who is in fact injected. This is not anything else. This is not some COVID-19 fake illness. This is where, again, these lies continue to be perpetuated from one source to the next, to the next, to the next, without anybody stopping and saying, wait a minute, stop spoon bending. There is no spoon. There is no COVID here. Not to mention, difficulty breathing, in particular when you're running or engaging in physical activity or having a quote-unquote asthma attack, is very easily diagnosed and even misdiagnosed among doctors among children. This could be easily diagnosed as being asthma when in fact it is not. When it is a far deeper central nervous system disorder that is brought on by, again, 5G towers and or being shed on and or being jabbed. But they're not making any of those connections. They're just saying more kids have asthma who are jabbed than kids who don't. Well, of course, that's the case. That's the case with everything. That's the case with every injection. Uninjected kids are always more healthy than injected children, because injected children are having their DNAs ruined, whereas uninjected children are not. It's that simple. It's just the spoon bending drives me crazy. There is no COVID. It doesn't exist. He went on here in this study, and it says, quote, the study about COVID and asthma in American kids and teens has gone mostly unnoticed. It hasn't been cited once since it was published in June, which may be why no one has raised an alarm over the stunning figures buried in its appendix about deaths among mRNA COVID-vaccinated kids. They show that 354 of the 64,000 children and teenagers who received a COVID mRNA shot died within a year after vaccination, a death rate of almost 6 kids per 1,000. In contrast, only 309 out of 320,000 unvaccinated kids died, fewer than 1 per 1,000. Again, this shouldn't shock anyone. And like I said earlier, asthma is an easy diagnosis for a lazy doctor to make if a child is having a breathing problem. Well, you have asthma, so here's an inhaler and have a nice day. And then they kick them out of their office. Need a refill? Come on back, no problem. And then you convince them that they have asthma when in fact they don't. They've been poisoned. And their DNA has been permanently damaged, and their central nervous system has been permanently damaged. Again, the list of symptoms is absolutely endless, but the list of names for breathing problems is equally as endless. So hand selecting asthma as a particular symptom for being injected with these shots, or even, quote unquote, having COVID as an uninjected child. Well, no, that's not true either. I'd go so far as to say that you'll never find asthma in any child who isn't injected with anything. If you have a child that is jab-free from before birth with prenatal drugs all the way through birth and all the way through childhood, you're not going to find one that has asthma. Not one. Again, are they going to get a cold? Sure, because that happens from time to time. Immune system gets stronger. They shed toxic cells inside of the body. Not a big deal. Very common. But being diagnosed with asthma as you're unjabbed? I don't think so. But again, to use the existence of a fake illness, COVID, as a backstop as to why someone has asthma or does not have asthma is equally as foolish. It's as foolish as believing that the COVID vaccine, quote unquote, bioweapon prevents anything. It just prevents life. That's about it. It prevents longevity, which of course is a massive problem. But again, if you listen to Joe Biden, he would tell you getting vaccinated is the best thing you can do to prevent yourself from being hurt in a hurricane. I'm not making that up. He's actually said that. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening as always. I'm going to wrap this up. Stay tuned for Wednesday. I'm sure there's going to be more information regarding this Hurricane Milton, if I'm saying that correctly. And pray for these individuals in the path of this geoengineered storm, no doubt about it. With that said, I'll catch you on Wednesday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.